Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have a wonderful show for you today with Corinne Conley, Jeremy Raw, Amélie Frank, and Jeff Mercer. After graduating from Mary Washington College in Virginia, Corinne Conley embarked on an acting career for over 70 years, beginning with the National Classic Theater, which toured schools and colleges with Shakespearean plays and other classics. She appeared in theater productions in Canada, Broadway, and London's West End. In Los Angeles, she credits many early sitcoms like Hogan's Heroes and Sanford and Son before an extended run on Days of Our Lives. Her most recent film was as the librarian in Paul Feig's A Simple Favor. Here's a wonderful writer and actor, Corinne Conley.
Thank you, Harry. I'm starting with a story that is about before I had a career, when I was just thinking about it. And it's called Sophisticated Lady. It was September 1949. I had graduated in June from Mary Washington College for Women in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and had landed my first professional acting role in The Common Glory, an outdoor drama in the colonial town of Williamsburg, Virginia. It had been an exciting summer, playing with a large company in our amphitheater, filled with tourists every night. When we closed, I headed to New York City with another actress, and we shared a large room over the Crystal Bar on 77th Street. Fortunately, since I was now going to be a New York actress, I had been persuaded to abandon my plaid skirts and crepe-soled shoes and was prepared to make the theatrical rounds in what I thought was a quite stunning copper-colored wool suit I had purchased at the local secondhand clothing store. I wore my suit for my first subway ride to Gimbel's, where I had gotten a part-time job behind the jewelry counter. I was somewhat apprehensive about my new job, but felt riding the subway that I was a real New Yorker. A man sitting opposite me seemed to be staring at me and suddenly moved into the seat next to me. "Excuse me," he said. "Are you by any chance an actress?" "Oh, am I an actress?" Well, of course, you could obviously tell by looking at me. "Yes," I said curtly. I certainly didn't talk to strangers, as a rule. "Well, I am producing a new play, and you look so right for an important part. Please get off at the next stop with me. I'll tell you all about it." Oh, so this is how it happens. I got off at the next stop and went along with him to his apartment, which was about 3 flights up. Now, let me spare you the suspense. I was not chalked up and thrown down the drain pipe, as my mother might have warned me. No, this guy was legitimate. He gave me the script and explained that the part was of a young woman whose husband had returned from the war injured. The scene he wished me to read was when I discovered that his injury had left him impotent. Oh, yes, impotent. I had a vague idea of what this might mean, but impotency was not a topic we had discussed at Mary Washington College for Women. Well, he gave me time to study the scene, and the vague feelings of what I was talking about must have been apparent. I recall he tried to give me direction, but Soon his disappointment in my acting ability was visibly apparent. A young couple came into the apartment and were excited to know if I was reading for the young wife. Yes, he said, but it didn't work out. His disgust palpable. So I went off to Gimbel's, looking swell in my copper-colored suit. I was somewhat dejected about my first New York acting opportunity, and certainly more aware that I was not quite ready for the big time. But then thinking about it, I realized I was lucky. I could have been murdered. Well, my next story, I've written a few years after this, after I did have quite a long career. And this story is called Legends I've Met. As I approach the celebration of my 95 years, it occurs to me that I've met a few showbiz legends in my life. These women were all born in the century before mine. So now, at 95, I may be the only person left on Earth who met each of them face to face. And I'd like to pay them tribute. I met my first legend when I was 2.5 years old. Texas Guinan, who was born in Texas, of course, in 1884. And I was shocked to read she died at the age of 49. Shocking because she left such a bountiful legacy. She appeared in several Broadway shows before becoming the first cowgirl to star in the movies. However, her greatest success came as owner of her notorious Club 399 in New York City. Her trademark greeting was, "Hello, suckers," which I thought was original with Sophie Tucker. Surprisingly, Texas and Sophie were friends, as was the iconic Mae West. Somehow, I wouldn't expect those three strong personalities to be friends with their competitors. New Yorker magazine in 1920 reported, "There is one woman who gets away with vulgarity, and that is Texas Guinan. Club 399 is terrible. It is rowdy and it is vulgar, but it is terrifically vital, and everybody should go there once in a lifetime." When New York City cracked down on the speakeasies, Texas took the show on the road. My parents took me to see her at a supper club in Montreal, Canada. The memory of that night might be influenced by my mother's retelling of the story, but I do remember sitting ringside and the lights flooding the floor. I caught the attention of our fun-loving hostess, not because of my Shirley Temple curls or adorable outfit, but Texas could not get me to smile. Everyone was having a great time, except that sourpuss at ringside. The Guinan performers all tried to cajole me into joining the fun, but obviously I was a stern critic. At the end of the show, Texas swept me up in her arms and took me backstage. And maybe that's where I belonged, because about 20 years later, it was in Montreal, where I had a brief but eventful nightclub career, during which time I met another historical theatrical personality, Miss Tanguette. In 1950, Montreal was called the Paris of North America. Nightclubs lined St. Catherine Street, the Chez Paris, the Copacabana, and others, all with the obligatory dance band and lines of beautiful dancing girls. The clubs closed late But that's when club performers gathered at favorite haunts to relax and eat and drink till dawn. I was playing at the Astor Melodrama Cafe, performing in The Drunkard with audience participation, kissing the villain, cheering the hero. Our ragtag cast, younger and seedier than the glamorous big-timers, were always welcomed at these after-hour get-togethers. And it was at one of these parties that I met the famed Miss Tanguette. Miss Tanguette was born in Paris in 1875. As a small child, she sold flowers at a flower market. At the age of 10, she had managed to wangle a job raising the curtain at the Casino de Paris. And by the early 1900s, she had become a massive musical star in Paris, appearing in operettas, although they said she was not the best singer, and starring in silent films, although she was not supposed to be the best actress. Jean Cocteau said Miss Tanguette exuded pure joy on stage and described her voice as slightly off-key, like that of the Parisian street hawkers, the husky, trailing voice of the Paris people. In 1923, Miss Tanguette was reported to be the highest-paid performer in the world. Her legs were insured for 500,000 francs. When I met her in 1951, she was almost 80, and she was appearing at a supper club in Montreal, just as Texas Guinan was 20 years earlier. And I don't remember Miss Tanguette doing anything more than sitting in a chair, displaying her still shapely legs in black mesh stockings, and being interviewed by a companion who translated her French for the English customers. At the after-hours club, with all the late-night performers, I remember her wafting over to our motley group of melodrama performers. She sat down next to me and wearily smiled, content to listen to our silliness rather than sit with her sophisticated supper club companions. When Miss Tanguette died in 1956, all France went into mourning. Now, my third legend, Josephine Baker, was perhaps the most remarkable of the three icons. Born in St. Louis, Missouri in 1906 to former slaves, she had to survive abject poverty. She worked in the kitchen of a white household at the age of 8. She left school at the age of 12 to marry. Fortunately, as a teen, she got involved with an itinerant black singing group that traveled the country. With them, she was invited to go to Paris in a show called the Revue Negre, which played the Folies Bergère. Josephine appeared in a see-through gown and became a Paris star at the age of 19. She was also the first Black woman to star in a French movie, The Siren of the Tropics, where she wore her infamous brief banana skirt. From this somewhat salacious showbiz beginning, Josephine became a French heroine during World War II. She entertained German troops and became a useful spy for the French military by passing on information of German troop movements. She is one of only 3 women to be recognized at the Pantheon, France's war monument, and the only U.S. citizen to be so honored. Did you realize that Josephine Baker spoke at the Martin Luther King March when he gave his I Had a Dream speech? I certainly didn't realize then that she was the famed Josephine Baker I had met backstage in Montreal in 1950. Maybe that's because they pronounced her name Baker. I remember everyone in Montreal called her Josephine Baker. They said it was the pronunciation she preferred. In my recent research, I saw no mention of Baker, but as a young woman having lived my previous years in segregated Virginia, the respect given to Madame Baker gave me a lot to think about. And now, Harry, you take it away.
Thank you, Corinne, for your wonderful, beautiful reading of your experience in New York and then the history of the theater. It helps us all understand your journey and reminds us of the great tradition of these icons. Thank you, Corinne Conley. Our next reader is Jeremy Raw. Jeremy Raw was the recipient of the Morton Marcus Poetry Prize. His chapbook, Another Way of Loving Death, was published by Moontide Press, and his collaborative chapbook, God is a River Running Down My Palm, was published by Picture Show Press. He is currently the co-host of the video series Poetry LA. Here's a superb poet, Jeremy Raw.
Thank you so much, Harry. It's such an honor to be here. For my first poem, I wanted to start with a piece that was inspired by Kathy Coleman, the late Kathy Coleman, her wonderful collection, Time Crunch. I had the pleasure of actually corresponding with her while I was actually working on this poem. And so I want to dedicate this poem to her. Last time I saw Eve. When I opened the laundry room door, smoke trundled out. My mom emerged from behind the gauzy thickness, for a moment indomitable as Betty Davis presiding godlike over all her silver screen eggs. As the smoke faded, she said, Dad must have lit one before he left for work. Even then, I knew my dad, who smoked in public, would not have gone through the trouble to hide in the laundry room for a single cigarette. That such layers of smoke couldn't have been cast in vocational habit. No, such thick exhales were fabricated with thought, cocooning her from the paring knife, the cleaving knife, the carve of the bone still brewing in the pot, always noises in the pot. I wanted nothing but to learn her solitude when I stole her cigarettes, studying the lipstick around the snuffed butts, as if she kissed death back and left the smear of her birthright like crime scene evidence. And I knew in the regret of tasting that regret, how she plunged the curtain around her to burn the things she couldn't say. Okay, and my next piece, this one, and as Harry mentioned in the introduction, I have a collaborative chapbook with this wonderful friend and poet of mine, Aruni Wijesinghe. And this one is from that collection. It is called I Am Staring at a Boy Tanning on the Chaise Lounge. And I fixate on him like he's some model in an underwear ad I saw in the very first copy of Rolling Stone I ever held in my hands. Or was it LA Express? The desire is so thick, it muffles me like propaganda. And just feeling this is good enough to be real. Knowing he's wising up to my flatline stare doesn't make me turn away. He adjusts himself as if to give a better side view. Then I think about what it takes for two people to come together, when we're fed so many angels and no wings. We've coined awful terms for acceptance, like compromise, sacrifice. And I could love all or none when love, with its instrument, is not a harp, but a scalpel, others a self from me. His glances thrown my way x-ray me skeletal. Shall I buy him a drink? Would I swim toward him to show him my hands that were incubated in the breath of small losses? Gathering water, I'd say, no pressure. These hands know how to hold on as much as how to let go. The sun, half moon to the fringe, spills its last shift into the pool. For the life we do not share, I will not grieve. Watch the ripple steady. All that will not happen has happened. That one's always a fun one to read because I think I'm playing with circular logic there. I have the next poem. This one is actually upcoming. It's going to be published in the Los Angeles Book Review. I do love this poem only because it's to give you a little context, it is about Lucy the chimp, and there's a documentary on how Lucy was raised by these psychologists at that time who wanted to prove a point that chimps can in fact act like humans, which turned out to be kind of a cruel experiment on the animal, unfortunately. So Janice Carter is a person who rehabilitated Lucy the chimp. Janice Carter lives in Gambia for years to rehabilitate Lucy the chimp back into the wild. I have a mirror that Lucy cherished that I occasionally use to remind me of my face, something other people saw. But like her, I have lost interest. Every day, the forest is a blank page we duel on with our foraging, and the night crumples it up and then gives us another page blank like the mouth of daybreak. It might take another lifetime to unlearn my society, like how the idea of green I was taught in print is never the pulsing, curdling shades I see on these trees. But I still hold on to my typewriter, and when I feel the urge, write to the few whose names I have kept in my memory chest, like dear life, who pretends an image of me. I almost feel my recording of events is a betrayal of this life, a life from which I could saw myself off clean like a limb. But each day, I see Lucy growing closer to the other chimps. I feel her almost forgetting me and the part of herself that wanted to be someone's child. And for my last poem, and thank you so much, Harry, and thank you so much for the Creative Chaos team for having me here and putting this together. This is such an iconic show. I'm very honored to be here. For my last poem, I actually wanted to do a piece that's included in this anthology that got published, Poetry Goes to the Movies, which Harry's also in. And this, it's it's like 101 poets responding to movies. It's quite a magnificent anthology. Please do check that out. This piece, I wrote this about Alan Rudolph's Choose Me, which is an independent movie that came into the 80s, and it's still very much near and dear to my heart. My last conversation with a radiotherapist. I don't blame them for thinking I'm akin to smoke. I dissipate before you even know you've exhaled. At times, I look like I sprouted up from the ground with the shell shock of nudity. As a chorus, I am everywhere, but I can't be identified, and no one is like me. I am hexed in that I like being alone, but someone is always opening my front door. I make drinks for the thirsty and lend an ear to the needy. Then the men who get served say I need them. What is it about those men that they like to write my story? You know the kind. A man who could marry a sonnet and hope that it will give birth to a Volta. Then why be livid when I turn my heels? I never mistook my house for a home, so in a disaster, I'm not a woman that others can see. Speaking of, I met a man wrapped in smoke that others can't touch. I had never felt so much like a Glock with a handle that he can wrap his fingers around. Never felt so much like weight. Sometimes I fancy being seen. We all like to be made human, despite the cost, no? Then I had a dream that he kissed me until I was just blood stars. Of course, I ran away with him. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy, for such a loving, immaculate reading of your wonderful poetry. It was poignant and loving, and you're just such a splendid poet. Thank you for joining our show. You enhance our show as you do all the shows and books that your poetry is in, that you read in. Thank you once again, Jeremy Raw. Our next poet is Amélie Frank. Poet, publisher, and pushcart nominee Amélie Frank has authored 5 poetry collections and 1 spoken word CD. Her work has appeared in Art, Life, Lummox, Poetic Diversity, Sparring with Beatnik Ghosts, Louvre, Literary, Cultural Weekly, forgive my French, Wide Awake, 1001 Nights, Voices from Lemart, Park Redo, and Poetry Goes to the Movies. Beyond Baroque Literary Arts Center and the cities of Venice and Los Angeles have honored Amélie for her activism and leadership in the Southern California poetry community. And I might add, she has a great heart and a great caring for her fellow poets. She's a camarado. Here's the marvelous poet, Amélie Frank.
Thank you, Harry. Elegant Universe. I never did find out what you thought when I spoke of the aftertaste of the astral particles you left on my lips. You were angry when I spoke, too angry to feel the fluttering in my chest, the expanding irregular galaxy of the left ventricle when she became a sphere, an apple, a nova, a ticking metal shield, pinging your name in contraction. That was 2 years ago. That was the last poem for a while. 2. Such are these kisses we find so hard to pin down in tin turns, riparian residue at the bottom of hopeful pans. When our lips share a common point, they are never quite coplanar. More the nervous waves in filament that mark the neon grids that never quite hold their shape long enough before collapsing into Liechtenstein, into the end of the war, into the watchworks of your amygdala, into an eruption of tropical origami cranes, into those 2 hawks glancing off the thermals before our very eyes that afternoon. How can you say to me that you are not beautiful when you are the sunlight bending in 17 different angles through the leaded stained glass? When you are the homecoming, the sugar shell peck on the lips, when you are the lower half of Spider-Man's mask as Mary Jane peels it both up and down before the vestiges of the Perseid storm, like tear salts on the lower rim of her mouth, find their opposite polarity in him. 3. It has always been nothing but impossible geometries, mind-blowing footage of a circle that becomes a scroll effect, a vortex that might hold martinis, a parallelogram of wishing, a trick of dimensions. You can visualize while I cannot because your mind is all numbers, machine language with a good head of hair. and I am just the four sleeping chambers, the breath, the gush, the amplexing of two primary colors, the next breath, a Pantone swatch of everything and nothing. How can you say to me that you are not beautiful when your eyes contain the glint of delight carried through generations of the boys of your tribe? When the tragicomic dualities of your face are seeded into the family helix, survival, genius, and possibly light espionage? When the desert shades of your skin radiate duty, fatherhood, and the longing for silence, for proximity to water, for the reassuring hiss of the seas as they receive newborn alloys, molten, perhaps even extraterrestrial. So much beauty there. So much of the microcosm that coats my tongue when your name pauses there to rest. So much of the three small lizards that Escher drew into our path that afternoon, like you, their skins indelibly beaded with so much light, like you, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I should explain for this poem that the Museum La Spicola is a museum in Florence, Italy, where they keep wax statues used to demonstrate the human anatomy. So they are revealed in layers to show internal organs or to show musculature, and they're quite beautiful. Also, the Monster of Florence was a serial killer active in Florence during the 1970s, 1980s, and he preyed on couples parked in lovers' lanes in Italy. How you came to be like my skin. I have mentioned a rough creature from Pennsylvania. I will not talk about her much because it is unnerving how much she is like me, yet unlike me. She is part of the backstory that goes with the meadow, the ravenous eagle, the rock, a 25-year voyage that began with a shipwreck and drifted into fitful slumber. It is a terrible story. I love monster movies because monsters are as familiar to me as holidays, yet no monster I have ever seen was as pernicious as she, my personal monster of Florence, who turned innocent maidens into exquisite husks for display in Museum La Spicola. This she could do from 3,000 miles away, and her mark would never see it coming. I didn't. Remind me to show you the maiden in wax sometime, but not after you've eaten. Of late, since the temperature hit 112 in my neck of the woods, I have felt a heat trapped in my tissues, radiating from my limbs, not like a fever, but like an engine, efficient and gradual, diffusing an energy unlike any one experiences in childhood or young adulthood. I would say this is the energy of survival. What is thrown off after the engine has run unceasing for 25 years. Of course, it would liquefy the virginal husk, evaporating her beauty, her simplicity, but not her heart. And here is where you come into play. The first time you embraced me, the first time you caressed my skin, addressed my arms, my shoulders, asking permission, may I touch you here? May I press against you here? May I anoint you here? You left tactile memory across every cell of my body, bringing blush and shiver to my complexion, igniting what an entire ocean had extinguished. That was you, and each time that it was you, I transubstantiated from beeswax and abandon into something and someone who breathed and gasped anew. Now here's the surprise. She appeared in the meadow, the rough thing from Pennsylvania. She approached thinking I would be caught supine and unawares in the tall grasses and late goldenrod. Imagine her surprise when I rose to my feet, gripped her by the jaw, drew her to within 6 inches of my face, and I told her, "On ne passera pas, chien." I was real, and I was loved, and I had skin that was electric with you. Your voice in my ear telling me I contain all of you. She is jealousy, fear, and dust. Cast her out of the meadow, and then let's have a picnic. And I did. And then we did. This next piece is called Jamboree Meadow Pantoum. A pantoum is a poem that repeats lines so that in the first stanza, the second and fourth line become the first and third line of the next stanza, and it weaves throughout the poem that way from stanza to stanza. First and third become second and fourth. Jamboree Meadow Pantoum. Now ask me again, what more do you have to tell me? Shall we meet where I dwell in the Jamboree Meadow? Shush, sir. Only I can invite you by golden sealed writ, for yellow is my elation, sunflower and lemon in the offing. Shall we meet where I dwell in the Jamboree Meadow? All manner of yellow bursts and runs riot in this place, for yellow is my elation, sunflower and lemon in the offing. Duckling, yarrow, moonbeam coreopsis, sunny puma, primula, all manner of yellow bursts and runs riot in this place. Come September, pumpkins will riddle the hillside and eclipse duckling, yarrow, moonbeam coreopsis, sunny puma, primula. Demeter revels, boundless profusion, for I am home at last. Come September, pumpkins will riddle the hillside and eclipse from hill crest to the rippling lapis of the coast. Demeter revels, boundless profusion, for I am home at last, and all femaleness becomes a matter of fluidity. From hill crest to the rippling lapis of the coast, the clement wind lifts your hair to trail behind you, and all femaleness becomes a matter of fluidity. As skeins of the air, it'll interlace your form and bind you. The clement wind lifts your hair to trail behind you, your body no longer a battlefield, but the grassland itself. As skeins of the air interlace your form and bind you, here you go untouched by the predations of the selfish. Your body no longer a battlefield, but the grassland itself. And no one comes here, no one, without my permission. Here you go untouched by the predations of the selfish. You choose and are chosen, hold and are held in the high heart. And no one comes here, no one, without my permission. Shush, sir. Only I can invite you by golden sealed writ. You choose and are chosen, hold and are held in the high heart. Now ask me again, what more do you have to tell me? The last piece, My Love as a Mannerist Painting. No deposition, no embrocation of limbs and loin, no lacrimal traces cooling on the zygoma, no lips to brow, no, suffering's over now, no arms, but to release and commend the ascent. Thank you so much, Harry.
Thank you, Amélie, for such a wondrous, erudite, vibrant, transcendent, and humorous reading. And I love your love of movies. You're just such a wonderful lover of movies, and I love that last piece. And thank you for bringing us your Jamboree Meadow. And you're great, Amélie. You really are great. So thank you Amélie
you.
Frank. Our next poet is Jeff Mercer. Originally from upstate New York, Jeff Mercer moved to Los Angeles in 1992 to get his bachelor's in film production at Cal State Northridge. After graduating, he worked in various aspects of the entertainment industry, including scripted and non-scripted television. Eventually, he and his partner, Christina, started their own video production to create online content. Jeff came to MPTF in 2019 as a freelancer, shooting and editing a number of projects. When COVID hit, he spent much more time on campus working for MPTF Studios and on Creative Chaos. Here's an excellent poet, Jeff Mercer.
Thank you, Harry. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm honored to be here. I haven't called myself a poet yet, I guess officially, because these are the first poems I have ever written, and the first one being I started in March. So I don't know if they qualify as poetry. I hope so. I tried, and also I tend to be an over-explainer, long-winded, and so I think my poetry reflects that because they're kind of long. So we'll see how many I can get through in my time slot. The first poem, actually the first line of the first poem was what it inspired me to, something I saw and inspired me to write it down. I said, I should be writing this down and let me try it in poetry form. So this became my first poem, which is called The 240. The gentleman with 2 12-packs of Budweiser, one half empty, quickly becomes 2 less in my short journey. The woman sitting on the ground by the orange line making a small statue out of horse manure, a somewhat disturbing sight indeed, but the bigger question, where did she get the manure? Up to no goods in their bulky black jeans and dirty black JanSport backpacks, high schoolers vaping not so inconspicuously to me, passing the smoke shops that were once called head shops, passing my first California home, once a Howard Johnson's hotel where I made my first California weed hookup, met my first porn star, and was introduced to In-N-Out Burger, all thanks to Scott, the front desk clerk, now converted into housing for the homeless. That person who thinks everyone on board wants to listen to their phone conversation or hear their mobile music. Passing by the street of my first official California address, also where a bird pooped on my head and my bike chain broke as I made my way to class. 2 separate occasions. Overweight addict finding a way to come up with the change to fill the pipe he hits while waiting, but still expects a compassionate driver offering a free pass. Taking that right, looping into the campus I once attended, now a place to walk the dog, hoping she chases some squirrel she'll never catch. Passing the building built post-Northridge quake, my first one. The previous apartment complex, 3 stories high, suddenly becoming 2 on that fateful January morning. To the left, my favorite sweet and pungent chicken dish from Cheese and that delicious Korean barbecue place whose name changed 4 times in the past 30 years, tasting just as good, but at a higher price each time. 1 block up, the infamous Townhouse B, a friend's flat in college where it was standard practice to draw penises in black Sharpie on the faces of those who passed out before the night was over, playing celebrity while somehow incorporating alcohol into the game and indulging in drugs as if it were part of our college curriculum. Good times. Taking that right toward the north end of campus, as the dorms approach, I'm often reminded of that time, still green to the western coast, rollerblading alone at night, as a car full of brothers doing their catcalls out the open window passed by. As a lone country cracker in the middle of the night, ignoring was my only defense. Heading north for that final stretch, contemplating a stop at Mobile for the addictive substance I call Coke in a 16-ounce can. Last stop, time to depart. Do I say thank you to the driver as I step off onto the pavement? A question I ask myself every time. Today I do, tomorrow probably not. Now, walking towards home, reflecting on my journey, an existential traveler I am. So many memories, so much life, all for $1.75 on the 240. And that's poem 1. Poem number 2, obviously that's about one of the buses I take, right? Poem number 2 is called The Road to Bethel and Back, and Yeah, I'm sure people on here of a certain age know Bethel was where they had the original Woodstock in 1969. When they found out so many people were coming, they moved it from Woodstock to Bethel, about 60 miles away. So this is the road to Bethel and back. It was a summer of 69, just like the Bryan Adams song says, except you didn't start a band. Your journey was much different. Traveling with two friends and their baby for the nearly three-hour journey, was it on a whim, a last-minute decision? Were you in the girls' home, and how did you escape for a weekend of music and the unknown? Did you reflect on the events that led you to that home, or did you push it away, even if for a moment, to listen to the sitar of Ravi Shankar? What went through your mind as Melanie plucked the guitar and sang Mama, Mama in her haunting voice? Devoted daughter to Christian conservatives, free-spirited at the core, a hippie child with long braids decorated with appleseed beads, something I had to Google. Nearly 5 months in with a tiny pouch and still only 98 pounds. Did I kick to the beat of Santana or CCR as you danced around like a gypsy woman, still scared but still feeling the vibe? Were you tempted by the smell of the hippie strain or the look of rolled back eyes as tabs hit tongues and began to dissolve? Did you play in the mud or go for a swim, stay in a tent, sleep on the ground, or endure the entire experience wide awake? Maybe that's why I'm a night owl. Too overwhelmed to stay for all 3 days, thumb out along the highway, waiting for a compassionate soul to stop. Not your first time hitching a free ride. You've done this before, except this time carrying an extra passenger. A much more historically significant sounding adventure than the 3 times I hitched in my life. What was that 150-mile journey like? What conversations did you have with your newfound friend? Were you contemplating your pending decision, or was your mind made up? Was I a constant reminder of that life-altering night roughly 5 months prior? Was there a toe tapping at the front door and a look of disappointment, or did you slide back in unnoticed? 4 months to go, and it will be done. And in another 50 years, I'm playing sleuth after selling my DNA to the highest bidder. Mission accomplished, but some time needed to adjust. I understand. Facebook was actually useful. You meet the result and get your truth as I get mine, forever grateful for the gift of my family despite their crazy ways, sometimes feeling like I don't want to be here, but because of your choice, I'm glad that I am. That's poem 2. Obviously, birth mother went to Woodstock with me in her belly. that was about that. So poem 3 is not finished. So same universe as the one I just read. So it's a bit darker. I don't know if I'll get to that whenever, but I'm going to go on to poem 4 that I wrote. And back in the 90s and early 2000s, I used to go to these things called raves, which were musical events. DJs spun records, people danced and partied till the sun came up, and they could either be in the valley, in a warehouse, or they could be out in the middle of the desert. And they always had these funky names. This particular one was in the desert and called Siam back in 1989, or back in 1998 is when it was. Siam. 3-hour drive into the desert following a makeshift map. Right at this mile marker along the 2-lane highway. Reset the odometer, go 1.3 down the dirt road, reset again. Landscape unfamiliar in the early dark night. Temporary parking lot of sand and stone ready to make the walk on uneven ground. An instant hookup awaits within the first few steps. No need to search. This is SoCal. It happens at times, but usually about Emily, our code word for X, another code for E. This time, fresh fungi and I get my eighth. Choke half down, trying not to throw it back up. Mix it with a Snickers, my personal recipe. Start the walk to the desert stage where large speakers painted yellow and black and named after the Tonka trucks I grew up on playing construction worker in my sandbox, now blasting my ears and the ghosts of Bombay Beach at 160 beats per minute. Nearby, a car alarm goes off and beeps to the rhythm of the music. 20 minutes in, it starts to hit. Should that be a sign since it normally takes 60? Embracing for what's about to come. 90 minutes in, that point of saying to myself, you took too much, you took too much. Words that would be echoed a week later by Benicio del Toro upon the U.S. release of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and become a mantra amongst our crew. 2 hours in, climbing rocks with unusually rough surfaces to get away from the lights, the music, and the people, finger in throat and trying to empty my stomach, hoping to purge the poison. No luck. 3 hours in, coming down just enough to a comfortable place of enjoyment as I wandered and danced. 5 hours in, As the rock formations behind my friend act as a backdrop for the artificial lights, they do their own dance in front of the dark desert sky that was illuminated through dilated pupils and offering an unearthly comfort. I exclaimed to her, I can feel the music. 7 hours in, a comrade in our crew, overwhelmed by his candy-flipping cocktail, blanket in hand, goes to the ground, lying in dirt in the middle of the pathway. Some check in on him, but most walk on by. I've seen him like this before, so I offer no comfort. 8 hours in, sitting on the edge of boulders as a documentary crew interviews someone below us. 1 year later, Better Living Through Circuitry highlights an era I was proudly part of. 9 hours in, the sunlight begins to peak above the horizon as Electric Sky Church takes the stage. Waiting all night to witness, it's why I'm even here, but now entering the in-between phase, too tired to dance within the crowd. 10 hours in, the sunlight hits the rocks, now looking like brains, once coral under the Salton Sea. That explains it from the night before. Funny things about coming down. The once upon a time waterline still stains the mountainside as dirty desert dancers with pacifiers try to embrace encroaching reality, but questioning if it will ever come. We gather ourselves and scoop up our friend. It's a dusty ride to the mile marker before hitting solid ground. 24 hours awake and contemplating our decisions, beats per minute on the CD, much slower now. It was one night out of many, with many before and many to come. 3 hours until home, waiting for sleep, waiting for normal, waiting to do it again. Okay, I don't know if I have time for, I think I'm out of time. I don't think I can fit the last poem in my time slot. So it's another long one. So Harry, if you.
Thank you, Jeff, very much for your vivid, specific details, your strength of narrative. You know, it's nice to experience what you experienced. Journey has always been a great convention in literature. That first one, the 240, you know, and also the raves. You're telling us about that, how great a memory you have, which is hard because those things come and go. But it was just such a wonderful reading, and I encourage you just to keep on writing. You know, you really are. You really have a great gift of storytelling and a great memory. And I always say poetry is particulars. You know, Blake said particulars are geniuses and generalizations are idiots. So thank you very much for your wonderful offerings in your words and your sense of humor, and also your truth. Telling the truth about your experiences. So thank you very much, Jeff Mercer. Excuse me for saying Jeremy. Jeff Mercer. And, why don't each one of you, starting with Corinne and then Jeremy and then Amélie and then Jeff, say a little bit about one or some of the others, poetry or the reading or something about poetry, about what you've heard and seen on the show. Corinne Conley.
Oh, I must say, I mean, when I hear the poets, they're not long-winded at all. They say so much in such a few lines. They can tell a story in 1 or 2 lines and really get to the essence of what you want to talk about. So I truly do admire you all, and I'd love to hear your poetry. And my goodness, it was wonderful to hear Jeff Mercer saying that he's just begun. Good luck to you. And whenever I hear this, well, I have tried it. I was going to read a poem today, but there was not time. And but yes, I'm going to concentrate on it because I do admire. It's just so beautiful to hear all these wonderful things expressed so concisely.
Jeremy?
No, I mean, it was such an honor to read with you all. I mean, this was really wonderful. I loved hearing the stories. And I love your quote. I mean, that's exactly what I felt, was like the particulars are the geniuses, really, to actually get those details come alive in the story like that. I really enjoyed every moment of it. Yeah.
Amélie?
Well, first of all, I wanted to tell Corinne that I was fascinated by this history of Josephine Baker or Bakar. That was something I had never heard of about her.
Oh,
and she was part of the resistance in France during the Second World War. And
yes.
So you taught me something new. Of all of the poets who read today, including Jeff, who considers himself rather new, I think the mark of a good poetry reading is that you put four poets together and not one of them delivers the same thing.
Mm.
It's always unique.
That's right.
Jeff?
And continuing on that note, that's, when I would first watch, or before I started watching the poetry show, I wasn't into poetry at all. I never cared for it, honestly. But I had a different notion of what it should be. And being amongst talented poets today, each with their own style, is what inspired me, because, they each had their own voice and each style that made me open up to understand that poetry can be more than it just has to rhyme, because that was what I grew up thinking, or it had to be the certain cadence, and hearing each different style, reminds me that this is why I felt more comfortable in trying it myself, because there's more room. It's a little bit looser. The rules are looser than what I once thought. So it's just I'm honored to be amongst such beautiful writers today. So thank you.
Well said. And thank you, each one of you, Corinne Conley, Jeremy Raw, Amélie Frank, Jeff Mercer. And you all lifted up my heart. And I always love this show, and we never know what we're going to get. And today was just a marvelous show. And I thank each one of you for your heartfelt and enhancing through the mind. I always think poetry is putting the mind on the page, the way you think and your rhythms. Nobody else is, just yours, exactly the way you want it. And you don't need permission. You just do it. And so thank you all. And here's our great director, Jennifer Clymer.
Thank you all so much. Before we let Harry go away, Harry's going to share with us who's coming up next week. And everyone be sure to tune in next week for Harry's Poetry Hour, when you can see.
Next Tuesday, Corinne Conley again. Phoebe McAdams, Susan Hayden, and James Cushing will read from Joy Harjo's Weaving Sundown in a I can't even read my own writing.
That's all right, Harry.
Something light. Forgive me for that. I don't have the book in front of me, but she was the poet laureate for 3 times of the U.S., and she's a Muskogee, American Indian. She sings in her poetry. So thank you very much, all of you, and forgive me for my forgetfulness.
It's all good.